Hello, everyone. On today's podcast episode, I'm going to continue talking about God magic again, or alchemy, you know. And when I say alchemy, you know, God magic, the word al means God, the word chemy, roughly translates to magic. So alchemy, God magic. Alchemist, right? An alchemist is someone who studies alchemy, right? And it's written in the name itself. Alchemist. Al, God, chem, magic, ist means man. So God, magic, man. That's what an alchemist is. If you remove the word al from alchemist, what do you have? You have your everyday regular chemist, right? A chemist or a magic man or a magician studies chemistry, right? Chemistry is what a chemist man studies. Chemistry. And that's what a chemist is, right? So chemists are the modern day magicians of the Bible. And the modern day magicians of history, you know. And it makes logical sense, why they're seen as magical, right? Because the things that a chemist can do is mind-boggling. Think about it. A chemist, someone who has a good understanding of chemistry, right? Who has a good understanding of the table of elements and how to use them properly, can create nuclear bombs, can create diamonds, gold. They can create so many cool things. They can even invent new elements. There's so many things a chemist can do. They can even create poisons. There are like infinite ways, you can apply chemistry. Because the whole world, right, is made out of elements. It's made out of atoms, right? The table of elements is no different from the table of atoms. So if you have a good understanding of atoms, you can literally change the world around you. You can transform the world around you, And in the eyes of others, the things that chemists do is too magical. This is why they call magicians or magic men. Is because they're too magical. The things that chemists are capable of are very, very, profound. Watch some videos of chemists, creating different, reactions. You'll be surprised how many cool things a chemist can do with just a few elements. So the name magician and chemist are actually pretty, it's pretty well named, because they can do a lot of things. But let's not talk about chemistry anymore, Let's talk about alchemy, the base form, the older version of chemistry. The older version of chemistry is God magic or alchemy. So alchemy, right? Let me give you an example of alchemy. Like I've talked about before, alchemy means God magic. So let me give it an example of God magic. When left and right come together, distance is born. Right? When left and right, when the concepts of left and right come together, magic is born. Something new is added, and that's distance. That's what God magic is, When two opposing forces, when two opposing concepts come together, multiple new concepts take their place. New things come about when two opposites interact. When positive and negative come together, the neutral spectrum is born, or the electromagnetic spectrum is born. When positive and negative come together, positive charges and negative charges, the two concepts come together, the electromagnetic spectrum is born. Light is part of the electromagnetic spectrum. Color, all these things, waves, radio waves, a part of the electromagnetic spectrum. So it is magic. When two colors are added together, a new color is born. When two opposites, equal and opposites, in duality are added together, something new is always born. When existence and non-existence come together, our world is born. The world we live in is born when existence and non-existence come together. So that's what God magic is. And God magic occurred at the very beginning of the world. Why? It's because when the beginning and the end comes together, time is born. So for time to start, both the beginning and the end have to come together as one. So it is pretty magical, but let's talk about the reason why I stated, I'm talking about God magic right now is because I want to talk about a different subject. And the subject has to do with, facts and innocence, When something happens, right? When a crime occurs and you become a suspect of a crime, you're what? You're either guilty or innocent, right? You're placed in a state where you're either guilty or innocent. Innocent. So just like I said before about God magic, when guilty and innocent come together, what? Something new is born. And the moment you become a victim of a crime, guilty and innocent will come together. And when guilty and innocent comes together, you become what? Then you either be guilty or innocent, right? Guilty and innocent. And the last one is the third one. You're neither guilty nor innocent. So let me explain that to you again. When guilty and innocent come together, three things are born. Guilty, you're either in the state where you're guilty and innocent. Yes, you can be guilty and innocent of a crime. Then you're either in the state where you're neither guilty nor innocent. Yes, you can be neither guilty nor innocent of a crime. And then you're in the state whether you're either guilty or innocent, where you're one or the other. So let me explain whether, each concept for you. The first one, guilty or innocent. When you commit a crime, most people expect you to be either guilty or innocent, right? This is the normal one. Most people just expect you to be either guilty or innocent. If there's no evidence to prove that you're innocent, most people just, accept that you're guilty of it. If there's evidence to prove that you're innocent, most people will accept that you're innocent, right? If there's evidence to prove that you're guilty, many people will just accept that you're guilty. There's evidence that you committed a crime. That means you're guilty, right? So guilty or innocent is usually what most people understand. This is the dichotomy that most people face when a crime is involved. They either automatically assume the subject is guilty, or they automatically assume the subject is innocent. And then when evidence comes, then they have to choose a side. The subject is guilty because there's evidence to prove that he's guilty, or there's evidence to prove that he's not guilty. If there's evidence to prove that he's guilty, most people assume he's guilty. If there's no evidence to prove that he's guilty, most people will just assume he's innocent, right? That's how guilty or innocent means. That's an example of guilty or innocent. So let me give you an example of guilty and innocent. When someone is guilty and innocent, many people may still choose sides whether they're guilty or innocent anyways. But there are times that people are both guilty and innocent of a crime. So let me give you an example of when someone is guilty and innocent. Someone is guilty and innocent when they drink a cup of coffee, right? Put the coffee on the table. walk away. And then when someone else, like a child comes, the child with a heart problem drinks a cup of coffee and then dies. If a child comes and drinks a cup of coffee that you place on the table, and the child has heart problems already, right? And then the child dies, the person who placed that cup on the table is both guilty of killing that child and innocent of killing the child at the same time. Why? From the person's point of view, all he did was drink a cup of coffee and place it on the table. He didn't tell the child to drink it. He didn't even know the child had heart problems. This is just a random child that just came and drank his cup of coffee. So he's obviously innocent. From his point of view, he is innocent 100%. He did none wrong. He did nothing wrong. But from the parents of the child's point of view, it's the equal and opposite. If the murderer didn't put that cup of coffee on the table, the innocent child wouldn't have drunk it. Wouldn't have drank the cup of coffee. So from their point of view, the man is guilty. If that cup wasn't there, the child wouldn't have died. You see? If that cup was not there, the child wouldn't have died. So who should they blame? An innocent child that doesn't know what he's doing? Or the man who put a cup of coffee on a table without the slightest care that someone will come and drink it? Who should be blamed for this crime? The child? Are you going to blame a little child for it? Are you really going to blame a little child for killing himself? Come on now. Would you really blame a little child for killing himself? The child didn't even know the cup of coffee would kill him. Would you really blame a little child for a crime he did not commit? Who would you blame here? The parents will blame who? The man. It was the man's fault. The man put the cup of coffee there, knowing full well that someone else could come and drink it. So obviously the man is guilty. Is guilty of at least manslaughter. But from the point of view of the parents of that child, he is guilty of murder. He is guilty 100% of murder. From the point of view of the man himself, why should he be blamed? He did nothing wrong. All he did was drink a cup of coffee. Is there something wrong with drinking coffee these days? He placed his cup of coffee. All he did was drink a cup of coffee. Would you blame him for putting his cup of coffee down on the table? He didn't tell anyone to drink it. He didn't even want anyone to drink it. He was not done with the coffee yet. If someone came and stole his coffee and drank it and killed himself, a child came and stole his cup of coffee and drank it. It's only a child, yes, but who cares? Theft is still theft. A child can still steal from others. The child stole his cup of coffee, drank it, and then the child died. Who should be blamed? Obviously the child. That innocent child was a thief. That child was a thief. 100% thief. And he paid for his crimes with death. He is innocent. He did nothing wrong. All he did was place his cup of coffee down. Should he be blamed for a crime he did not commit? Do you really think you should blame a man for a crime he did not commit? Someone came and stole his cup of coffee and then died from it. Yes, it's a child. Yes, it's an innocent child that doesn't know what he's doing, but it doesn't matter. Theft is still theft. The child should have paid for his thievery. The child was still a thief. Right? Since the child was a thief, he paid for his crimes with death. So who do you really want to blame him? Do you really think he should be guilty of a crime he did not commit? Of course, it's not his fault. Yes, his actions led to the death of the child. But do you really want to blame him? Blame the child. Blame the parents for not keeping a watch, on their child. If the parents were there, the child wouldn't have stolen his cup of coffee now, would it? The child would not have stolen his cup of coffee. So don't blame him. Blame the child and blame the parents. It's their fault the child is a thief. It's their fault the dead child is a thief. So who would you blame? When a man is both guilty and innocent, right? From one point of view, his actions led to the death of the child. So yes, he is guilty of killing the child. If his cup wasn't there, that child is just a child. 5 years old is only 5 years old. What is a 5 years old child, knows about right and wrong? You see a cup of coffee there, he just thinks that, hey, it's water, and drinks it. Is it really the false child? Is it really the child's fault in this? Would you blame the child for just drinking a cup of water? You thought it was a cup of water? The child was thirsty and came and drank a cup of water. Would you really blame the child for being a thief? Is it the child's fault for drinking a cup of water? He found out he's bitter, but it's already too late. He already drank it. Is it really the child's fault? Who would you blame in this? Because the man is both guilty and innocent. You have to, it's even harder for you to pick a side. Because from the guy's point of view, he did nothing wrong. Absolutely nothing wrong. But from the child's point of view, it's only a child. Will you really blame a little child for a crime he did not commit? It's only a child. They don't have a full understanding of right and wrong. So a child is not theft. No one was there when the cup was, saw a cup on the table. No one was around for him to ask, can I drink this, should I drink from this cup? No adults were nearby. So would you blame the child? A thirsty child saw a cup, on the table and drank it. Is it really the child's fault? In many states, childs don't have the right to govern themselves. The parents are usually the one that has to take care of the child, because we know that children do not have common sense. They're not smart enough to realize who's right, what's right, what's right to do, what's wrong to do. They don't know yet, and the 5-year-old child is even younger than most. It's not old enough to even understand the concept of theft, fully. That what belongs to someone else belongs to them. Their mind isn't fully developed yet. So would you really blame a child for dying, for killing himself from a cup of coffee? Or would you also blame the man? Are you willing to blame an innocent man who did nothing wrong? Who would you blame in this matter? The child or the man? They're both guilty and innocent. The child is innocent because it's just a child. The child is just a child. His mind is not fully developed yet. He's just a baby. Are you going to blame a baby for a crime he did not commit? Who are you going to blame? The adult or the baby? When decisions are made, who do we blame? Adults or children? When crime is committed, who do you blame? An adult or a child? 5 years old. He's not even that old. It's only 5 years. He's not even that big. 5-year-old children aren't that big, aren't that tall. Like small little children. Who would you blame? The adult or the child? The child is both guilty and innocent. The adult is both guilty and innocent. Who would you blame? And that's the dichotomy of guilty and innocent, is that It's very hard to choose. If you choose one, you've made a wrong judgment. If you choose the other, you've also made the wrong judgment. Whichever choice you make, you always look like the bad guy in front of others. If you're a judge and decide to side with the child, now everyone who sided with the man, with the adult, will think you made the wrong judgment. If you side with the man, the parents, mostly and probably many parents, will disagree with you. It's just a child. What does the child know about right and wrong? What does the child know about theft? No one was there. It was just a cup of water. And in the child's eyes, the child was thirsty and was just there to drink a cup of coffee or a cup of water. Turned out it was coffee. And now the child's dead. It is still just a child. You understand? So that's the problem with when someone is guilty and innocent. It's very hard to decide how to charge that person as a judge. Because whichever decision you make, in the eyes of others, it will always be the wrong decision. You will never make the right decision in this matter. If you choose the child, the people who believe the man is innocent will blame you for wrongfully accusing or wrongfully arresting someone, wrongfully deciding that someone is guilty when they're not, wrongfully punishing someone, wrongful punishment is what they call it. But if you choose the adults, all the parents of the child, all the parents that love children, they'll go against you. They will go against you. It makes no logical sense for you to for you to not at least penalize the adult. It was the adult's fault after all. That coffee belongs to who? An adult male. He should know, what to do with his cup of coffee. He shouldn't just be leaving his cup of coffee everywhere. Someone could die from it. And someone did die from it. So it's his fault. His fault alone. So this is what you have to deal with, So let me talk about the last one. When you're neither guilty nor innocent, is when you're positioned when you're neither guilty nor innocent, you're the judge, right? You're someone who's not part of the case whatsoever. So let's talk about the case where, let me give you an example of this, right? A grown man kills another woman, right? Rapes and kills a woman somewhere in New York. A grown man, adult male, killed and raped a woman somewhere in New York, right? It just happened 2 hours ago. And everyone just found out recently, it was videotaped, right? Everyone that's not part of that crime is neither guilty nor innocent of the crime, right? They're in a state where they're neither guilty nor innocent. Someone who lives in Washington, right? Someone who lives in Washington and end up watching the news that, a man just raped and killed someone. Would you think that person is innocent of committing that crime? No. The man watching the news from Washington has nothing to do with the crime whatsoever. Since you have no relations to the crime, you're what? You're in a state where you're neither guilty nor innocent. You can't be called innocent because there's no possibility for you to be guilty to begin with. You can't be called guilty because obviously, you're living in Washington. The crime occurred in New York. There's video evidence of the man raping and killing the woman. So how do you factor into this? How do you, living in New York, watching the news of someone kill someone, relate to you killing the person. There's no relation whatsoever. You're in Washington, hours away, miles away. This crime occurred in New York. And it just occurred recently. So the chances of you driving or flying all the way to, New York to commit a crime is already zero. You look nothing like the person who committed the crime in any way, shape, or form, right? And they already have the person in custody. The cops caught the person right away, right after killing the person, right? The person turned himself in. He said, "I did it." There's picture, image, videos that show they look exactly alike. DNA evidence proves that they're exactly the same person. What does that, So what does the crime have to do with you? If you're all the way in Washington watching the crime, it has nothing to do with you. And since it has nothing to do with you, you're in what? In a state where you're neither guilty nor innocent. So those are the three states you get when guilty and innocent come together. When guilty and innocent come together, what? You're either guilty or innocent. You're both guilty and innocent, right? And then the last one is you're neither guilty nor innocent. The ultimate beginning. Before guilty and innocent, existed, or before you get, charged, before you come under suspicion, you are neither guilty nor innocent. When a crime occurs, the vast majority of humanity are what? Neither guilty or innocent of the crime. Because most of us have no idea that the crime is, there's such a crime to begin with. We're out here living our own lives. What does the crime have to do with us? Nothing. And the thing is, when it comes to guilty and innocent, you have to prove both sides have to prove their claim. You either claim you're guilty or you claim you're innocent. If you claim you're guilty, you have to prove that you're innocent. If you claim you're guilty, you have to prove that you're guilty. If you claim you're innocent, you have to prove that you're innocent. If you claim someone else is guilty, you have to prove that they're guilty. If you claim that they're innocent, you have to prove that they're innocent. Otherwise, someone will blame you for it. Someone will either blame you for being guilty, or someone will either, protect you for being innocent. Either way, there are two sides to an argument. That's how it is with atheism and theism. If you believe that God exists, you have to come up with proof that God exists. If you believe that God doesn't exist, you also have to come up with proof that God doesn't exist. These are two equal and opposites. You must prove your claim. Every claim requires proof. You can't prove your claim, you shouldn't believe in something. If you can't prove that someone is innocent, you shouldn't believe that they're innocent. If you can't prove that someone is guilty, you shouldn't believe that they're guilty. Because you can always be in the state where you're neither guilty nor innocent. It's not one or the other. You can always be in a state where you're neither a believer in God nor not a disbeliever. You can be in a state where you neither believe that God exists nor believe that God doesn't exist. Yes, that state is possible. The moment you believe that God doesn't exist, what? Without evidence, you've made an illogical choice. Believing that God doesn't exist is a claim. Claiming that God doesn't exist is still a claim. Just as claiming that God exists is a claim. You have to prove both sides. That's how life works. When existence and non-existence come together, the whole world is born. So that's it for today's podcast episode. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.